Yes.
I was reading up on the industry, and I didn't realize, according to, as of, I think this was 2016, there were 1,000 registered fishing vessels. This is, I found this online. I mean, I'm sure that it's more than
Mhm.
that now. And
Yes.
they also were saying that, I mean, this is a strong industry, a strong
Yes.
industry in Barbados, the fishing industry, that it supplies at least, 12 to 16 million dollars of our GDP, annually.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this is US dollars. 12 to 16 million dollars is a contribution of the fishing industry of Barbados, to the GDP.
Yes.
So talk to us about this industry, Mr. Thorne, and why you're so interested in what is happening to it today.
Well, I'm duty bound to be interested because outside of Bridgetown, I think Oistins is the most significant fishing town. Oistins is a fishing town, and I always make that point that the identity of Oistins is that of a fishing town more than anything else. We have banks there. Well, I think we have one now,
Mhm.
but we have banks, we have other retail sectors. But we like to define the town by its fishing culture. And
Yes,
you mentioned statistics. I am not an authority on the statistics, but
yes,
and we do know it contributes significantly to the Barbadian economy. But
yes,
I want to point to its historical and cultural significance. And I always say this, that fishing was one of the early expressions uh, of poor people going into self-employment. It was
mhm,
an early expression of economic freedom, because, as I've always said, uh, while historically our people were locked into the land almost literally, a fisherman went out to sea, so he escaped the bonds of the society, and he went out to sea and he fished, and that was an early expression of freedom, and that is something that we don't focus on enough. That our fishermen are symbols of early freedom, early expressions of freedom, and we must always be grateful to them for being those early symbols of cultural freedom. And so, as I said, I'm not an authority on the statistics, but symbolically, the
yes,
fisherman is a very important cultural and historical figure in this country. And
mhm,
if only for that reason, they must be respected. Now, we all know that the fisherman, in terms of his image, has historically been subject to disparagement. He has been seen as a man uh, not of not the greatest refinement, and that is the stigma that has attached to fishing. But I want to say to you that in modern times and contemporary times, fishing has been brought into dignified places. And a lot of the owners of the fishing boats are people who admittedly they do other jobs, but the industry maintains its economic importance to this country. And I want to say that it has become a dignified industry. The problem may be, do the rest of us consider fishing to be a dignified industry? Now, you
mhm,
mentioned some statistics, and those statistics will surprise a lot of people, because when the average Barbadian thinks of industry, he does not think of fishing. He just thinks, well, sometimes I want some fish. Uh, he knows it comes from the sea, but he is not aware that it is a highly sophisticated industry where men go out for 2 and 3 weeks, come refrigerate the fish, come back home, refrigerate it at the various facilities, and market that fish, sell that fish to the vendors, who then themselves market it again to members of the public. Now, we've come a long way, Marcia, from
yes,
the 60s and 70s in Barbados. There was the phenomenon of the fish vendor. We used to call them hawkers. They had to
mhm,
walk into the villages, and they would walk into the village with the basket on their head, and you'd hear them saying, fish, fish. In those days, it used to be, I think, about 10 for a quarter. and a quarter is 25 cents, as you know. And over the years, you watch the price change. And I remember it was supposed to be very expensive when it dropped to 5 for a quarter. And then they and this is my own personal history speaking here, so that they used to price them according to a quarter, 25 cents, and we knew that the price was increasing when they stopped speaking of the price in terms of a quarter, and they started speaking of it in terms of a dollar. So it went from 5 for a quarter or 4 for a quarter to 4 for a dollar. And that told us that we were moving into modern times. That told us that the industry was gaining some respect, because a lot of people used to complain about the price. You know, a man would go into Broad Street and not complain about the price of a suit, but he would complain about the price of the fish when that lady had to walk sometimes from Bridgetown all the way into the rural parts of Barbados selling fish. So it has come a long way. A lot of the disrespect is still there, admittedly, because, as I've said, because of the history of fishing, it has not been brought into, within people's estimation, into the places of highest esteem and highest dignity. But it is getting there, and the devastating loss this week will be a reminder to people of the importance of this industry to Barbados. They will lose a significant part of the fish that they've had, and that will be a reminder of how important the industry has been to Barbados and to Barbadians.
Yes. I mean
I
that
think you wanted to ask
I
me a
could listen
question.
to that the whole night. Just the history of it. They would even the way they call the fish. They would do it in, it's almost like they're singing a song. It wasn't just
Yes,
fish.
yes,
They would drag it out, and the children would tease
yes,
them. They know
yes,
they're coming, and it was just
yes,
part
yes,
of that symphony. It's almost that it did something to your ears. You heard it, and it
yes,
sounded like it was a
yes.
song. You know,
Yes,
they,
I,
they
I'm
were they
glad.
were
I'm
so
glad, Marcia. I'm glad you used the word symphony, because when the children all ran out and the mothers would run into the street and surround the vendor, the hawker, and the way she lifted the basket off her head, it was almost like a dance when she put it down into the street and people gathered around. And sometimes they'd negotiate a new price right there in the street. And I want to tell you, uh, the smells that would emanate, the smell of the sea, the smell of the fish, the smell of sand, uh, was on her clothing. It was in the basket, but there was always sand, the evidence of sand, and that was evidence that you were getting something fresh. Uh,
yes, yes,
so I'm glad you used the word symphony. That interplay, that interrelationship between the vendor and the villager was almost
yes,
artistic. And you used the word
yes,
symphony, and I'm glad you did, because there's the word I want to use here is beauty. There was beauty in that relationship. There was beauty in the labor that they did. You know, these are people who went out without any license, without any permission from anybody. They braved the seas, and they stayed overnight. I mean, if you stand and look at the sea, I'm not a lover of the sea particularly. Well, not going into it. But if you stand and look at the sea at night, for me, it is the most frightening thing. And there are men who
yes,
spend their nights literally under the stars. It's a very dangerous job. It's a very, very dangerous job. But
yes.
it
Very
is beautiful labor. Yeah, it is beautiful labor
beautiful,
historically and culturally.
yes. And they contribute, and there is a business aspect of it, and here we are smiling and in the memory of all of that, and they bring, they have contributed so much to the culture, but they've also contributed
Yes,
significantly to our economy. Now, I spoke to a couple of
yes,
the fisher folk today, and they talked about the ability to for generational wealth. So a lot of this kind of business is kind of generational. And so when we see a picture
yes,
like this on the screen, Mr. Thorne, when we see this on the screen with this
yes,
devastation, we're looking at families, the family wealth, generational wealth. This is a way
yes,
for Black people, poor Black people, to be able to
yes.
pass on wealth and business,
That's
generational
correct.
families. So can you
That's
talk to us
correct.
a little bit about that, because we're going somewhere with this tonight. Talk to now, talk
Yes.
to us about the business aspect of this.
Let me tell you, a fishing boat is a highly valued asset. You would have heard, I think, Mr. Bourne uh,
Yes,
estimate the value, and he said that his losses would amount to, I think he said $500,000. His three boats. I discovered in the last couple of days that I was asking one of my constituents about replacing his boat, and he was talking about a wooden boat, and I was of the view that wooden boats were on the way out, which was something that was sad to imagine, because again, Marcia, another cultural feature that reveals beauty is boat building. I don't know if you've ever stopped by a boatyard and watch the boat builder. And a boat builder is a scientist. I mean, that is a level of skill that is unequaled in any other area. A good boat builder is a good scientist, he's a good mathematician, he's a good artist, he is everything. To build something out of slabs of wood that will travel miles and miles out into the ocean and will come back and will not leak. That is almost as that takes as much skill perhaps, and this may sound heretic, but the pyramids, building the pyramids has been an architectural marvel. And to build a fishing boat out of wood, when you think of it, it's really an architectural marvel that it goes on to
mm-hmm.
the sea, it maintains its balance, and it does not leak. That is a skill
Yes,
that is not easy to acquire. So again, the beauty in labor, the beauty of labor, and you find people doing that. And I thought it was disappearing because I drive by Six Mengs as well, and sometimes you see a boat. It's just lying there, and you're wondering, well, where's the boat builder? I was so relieved yesterday when I found out that people are still building boats out of wood, and one of the reasons is financial. I was
yes,
told that the the wooden boats are cheaper now. Fiberglass boat, which is the more modern boat, that's far more expensive. I'm told that that could run up to about $400,000, and a wooden
yes,
boat would be somewhere between 150 and $200,000. Speaking subject to correction. So
yes.
that
That's
I've
what
said
I
all of that
understood
to
today.
say that yes, yes, I've said all of that to say that it is a significant financial investment, significant. And Meng Dai, and I sent you some photographs today, and Meng Dai and their boat becomes an important part of their legacy. They can put it in a will so that a man can own a boat valued at $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it may be valued at more than the house that he chooses to live in. And that becomes a more highly valued asset than his house, than his car. And you spoke of generational wealth. That is evidence of generational wealth. That is evidence that the industry has become highly sophisticated, that it has moved from the very modest Moses. I think you know what is the Moses boat, that was the most modest of them. And
Yes.
you find men now building very large boats that go to sea for 3 weeks. They have their fridges and so on board, and that could run up to about $500,000. So it is a highly sophisticated industry, and as you said, there is evidence of generational wealth within the fishing industry. And I'll tell you this, Marcia, other people in Barbadian society, of upper society, have discovered not only the importance of fishing, but how lucrative fishing can be. And they have joined as well. So that
Mm,
something that started out among poor people has become so lucrative and dignified that it has found its way into the upper reaches of society. So other people have joined in the fishing industry. And that is how important it is to
yeah.
Barbadians.
Very important. So there are lots of people who they see a picture like this, and I will be honest, when this started to occur, on when I saw the pictures on July 1st, I believe, was it, or late July
Mhm,
1st into July 2nd, I said to my
mhm.
husband, I said, but why didn't they secure their boats? If what we're saying is, so you're saying to us that this is generational. They sometimes this is more expensive than the home that they live in, than the car that they drive. The big question is,
Yes.
why were these boats insured? Why did this happen to their prized possessions?
I don't have all of the answers, but I can tell you some of the answers are right there before us. And I've spoken to some, and it seems that they felt that that was their only recourse. Now, I will tell you that the weekend before this storm came, I
Yes.
had heard that the facility in the north was allowing fishing boats to take safe harbor within that facility.
And
I
this
have
facility you're
subsequently
talking
been
about is
told
Port St. Charles? Is it Port St. Charles?
Port St. Charles. Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
I was
Continue.
told that. And all this is subject to correction. All this is subject to confirmation from uh, the owners of that facility. I've then been
Yes.
subsequently told that in order to get shelter in that facility for one's boat, your boat had to be insured. Well, obviously, if things got rough down there and your boat, which is being allowed to come in, damages somebody else's boat, you would want to be sure that uh, the both boats that collided with each other are insured, so that there's no difficulty uh, having both sets of damage covered for the purposes of insurance. So
Yes.
I was told that that was a restriction. Yes, that the Port St. Charles may, and Mrs. Weeks, I'm speaking subject to correction. One has to be very, very careful. Yeah.
Yes.
If what I'm told is true, it makes sense that a man who has his expensive boat in the Port St. Charles facility, if he is of such good nature and such good social will, such goodwill, that he will allow another chap to bring his boat in there. He wants to be sure that it is insured, so that he
Yes.
protects his own property, and I can understand that. So that was a restriction. One of the other restrictions I'm told is that the haulage from Bridgetown to Oistins was in excess of $7,000. Again, I don't wish to be disclosing people's private business, but I think we need to know and to hear these things, so that that is something that happens. And I will pause and say to you, a lot of those boats in Bridgetown are owned by people who operate out of Oistins. Yes, and
I
when
see.
there is bad weather, yes, when there's bad weather, they would take them to come in. When there's bad weather coming, they would take them apparently down to the Bridgetown port, the Bridgetown facility. Uh,
So, if I could just
I've,
pause
I've,
here,
I've,
Mr. Thorne, to make sure I
yes,
understand.
please.
So, you're saying that because a lot of them, well, it could be implied that quite a number of them went to Bridgetown because of this possible requirement, because I heard that as well. I did my own research as well, and what I was told is
Yes,
that they had to be insured in order to get to Port St. Charles. So a lot of them went to
yes,
the Bridgetown Harbor. Plus, it's closer. Is there?
yes,
Would it have cost
yes.
more? You think if it had to get to Port St. Charles, if they had to go to Port St. Charles?
Well, you could have sailed. I don't think they would have gone by land. They could just simply have sailed it down the coast.
I see. Yes. Okay.
So it's there's no cost. The cost of which I was speaking was the cost to haul it by road. And I think they do this late at night. They come up Spring
Yes.
Garden, come up the highway, and find their way
Yes.
down to the
And
boatyard
that's
in
seven
Oistins. And
thousand
I'm told
dollars.
that that trip, yes,
Mm-hmm.
I'm told that that trip could cost in excess of $7,000. So that
Continue.
it seems as if this was the last resort for a lot of these people, that they just bundle these boats into this area, and as the cliche goes, hope for the best. And clearly the best did not happen, because it was a tragedy that was on the cards. I mean, you bundle all those boats in that small area. What's the alternative? The alternative is you just release it out into the sea. But as it turns out, and you couldn't, obviously you'd lose it. It would probably end up in Tobago. So that they bundled them up into this confined area, and we all know what happened. Now, I don't want to play lawyer on your program, but if the fisheries division, whoever operates that area, gave consent to those boats finding harbor in that confined area, maybe they are accepting some responsibility for the safety of those boats. Maybe they are, but I don't want to play lawyer here. What we do know is that it turned out to be disastrous, and that they are where they are today at the bottom of the sea in some cases, or irreparably destroyed because they were there in that confined area. I'm not trying to cast blame on any public servant or anything, but where they were, they ought not to have been. And I I expressed the view, and I still do, that from the time we knew that this system was coming, that some provision ought to have been made for those boats other than that confined area. And I went to Parliament on Tuesday, and I was expecting a ministerial statement. I did not hear it, and I felt that I should have my say as leader of the opposition, as a person representing the town of Oistins within the constituency of Christchurch South. And I expressed the view then, and I still express the view now, that open areas across Barbados ought to have been made available for those boats. I heard Mr. Abed say on radio this evening that the businesses, the buildings in town suffered no damage. Yes, what that indicates to all of us is that the buildings and property on land was far safer than boats in that confined space. I repeat, there could have been some haulage of those boats well in advance of Monday that would have guaranteed their safety. And I said, playing fields, open areas, all across. We have so many of them across Barbados. And I know that whenever I speak, it is as if some people expect me to be supportive of the government. I'm the leader of the opposition. Yes, and constitutionally, the leader of the opposition opposes the government. But he does not oppose the government for the sake of opposing the government. He opposes the government constructively. And constructive opposition involves the truth. And the truth is that, and this is an undeniable truth. The truth now is that, the undeniable truth is that those boats are damaged and or destroyed because of where they were located. Nobody can deny that. And I'm saying that as an alternative after the fact, that it would have been more sensible, I think, to take those boats, whether if they took them into streets where the buildings have not been destroyed, onto playing fields, wherever. You had to take them somewhere where they did not suffer damage. Now there's Tank Bay, there's Pile Bay, there's Six Mines. Have we heard of any damage to the boats in those areas? I have not heard of it. So it stands to reason that the other boats in the other locations did not suffer damage because they were properly, I beg your pardon, they were properly kept, they were properly located. The point I am making is that you could have put those boats almost anywhere except in that confined location. They are lost or damaged today, not because of any structural defects, but because of where they were located. Anybody who wants to challenge that really is trying to make a political point that really is not worthy of being listened to. And I'm saying that my criticism has been constructive. It has been based on truth. It has been based on the evidence. I was referring to Mr. Abed's statement that just a mile away, perhaps, the buildings in town did not suffer any damage, and that they could have found land spaces for the safekeeping of those boats and to place them there until the bad weather had passed. Now, as I said, there seems to be an intolerance. Uh, well, I expect resistance to the voice of the opposition. I respect that. I expect resistance. What I'm really fatigued about is the intolerance.
Yes.
This view from within government circles that you do not have the right to criticize the government. And that is a right I have. And the more, Marcia, the more resistance I meet, the more intolerance I perceive, the more I will pursue this job on behalf of the people of Barbados. Yeah, I'm going to repeat that. That I have a duty to scrutinize, I must analyze, I reserve the right to criticize, and where it is due, I will chastise. Government will make mistakes. And anybody who feels hurt by this will have to endure the pain of hearing it. That I believe the government made a mistake. And I believe that those boats suffered because of government's delinquency. And I said it in the Parliament yard when I was angry, and I'm not as angry now. Well, not demonstrably so. But I am still adhering to my view that the government seemed to be paying much of its attention to the entertainment at Kensington on Saturday. And I'm going to disclose something now. I'm going to put myself in it. I received an invitation to cricket in one of the privileged locations at Kensington to look at the final. I refused. Now, I didn't think my presence would have made a difference. I didn't think so. But I felt the government and the members of the government ought to have been paying more attention to the hurricane and to preparedness. Because here it is, you have the government telling people to be prepared. Oh, let us be prepared. But we are at Kensington in entertainment. And, this is Saturday and a hurricane is coming on Monday, a day after the event. Now, the event is important. I have to ask the question, is there some political figure, and I'm going to use broad terms, is there some political figure in this country that remained delinquent insofar as the safety of those boats were concerned? As I said in Parliament Yard, and I repeat, were we engaged in revelry when we ought to have been paying attention to a cluster of boats in a confined area that caused their damage or destruction? And I can be accused of politicizing it. Yes, I am politicizing it. Because this is something, there are very few areas of our life which are not impacted or affected by political action. And the location, that is why you see the Prime Minister and all the ministers turning up and having press conferences. No, they are not there because they are simply, they're not there out of any social goodwill. They're there because of a political obligation. They must be there. Yes, and they must come up with ways as politicians, as people responsible for political action. They must come up with ways to solve the problem. So their presence there is political. So you can't accuse me of being political when their activity is equally political. So that my response, yes, it is political. Mine is a political response, and it is necessarily so because the government is involved, and the government is a political entity, and the government is involved as a political entity. So it is, the whole thing is political. So that there's this attitude now that whenever you comment, oh, he's bringing politics into it. Yes, I am bringing politics into it because politicians are involved and politicians are duty bound to be involved. And if the prime minister and the cabinet are involved, I reserve the right to be involved, and they are involved as as politicians, and I have a right to be involved as a politician as well. Their action, their reaction is political, and my reaction is political as well. So I want to dismiss the nonsense from the psychopaths in social media who are saying that I am politicizing an issue when the government itself is duty bound to do something political to rescue these people. So let us
Yeah.
dismiss the nonsense about he's just being political. Look, politics affects people's education. You would have seen just 2 days ago, Marcia, or yesterday, the government issued a statement in which they are threatening to pass a law to control private schools so that political action affects education in Barbados. Political action affects people's access to housing. Political action affects people's access to health care. Political action affects the prices of goods because it is government that sets taxation. So I want to reject this nonsensical comment about politicizing something. Yes, you politicize it because it is political action that gives
Yeah.
people safety and gives people guarantees of fair access to a country's resources. So it is time for the sycophants on social media to stop that nonsense, stop that
Yeah.
rhetoric. All that they are expressing is an intolerance to
Yeah.
criticism. The government must not be criticized. So when the prime minister visits, that is not political. The prime minister is probably doing it because she's a nice woman. And she's going there because she's nice and she's a hero. No, she's not going there because she's nice, which she may well be at the personal level. She may well be a nice person, but she does not visit these places because she's nice. She is duty bound as prime minister of this country. She is duty bound as the chairman of the cabinet. She is duty bound as prime minister to visit these places and to seek to bring order, to bring restoration, to bring reparation to an industry that was destroyed by the negligence of a government and its officials. That is my position. It was my position on Tuesday. It was my position on Monday. And it remains my position to this very minute while I'm speaking. I want to
Yeah.
say again, if it were not political, why was I summoned to Parliament on Tuesday on the promise that I would have heard a ministerial statement as to the events that took place on Monday? That's political. If you promise me that a minister is coming there to make a ministerial statement, he is not going there because he's nice. He is going there to address an issue that confronted Barbadians. He's doing that in his capacity as a minister, as a parliamentarian, as a politician, and he's making a political statement. And Marcia, I intended to go there and to make my political statement as
Yeah.
representative of Christchurch South, in which Oystons is located, as leader of the opposition. I had intended to respond to it, not to respond with destructive criticism, but to respond to it as objectively as I could, and definitely honestly and with the truth. I was deprived that opportunity. I am still curious today as to why I was asked to come to Parliament on Tuesday to hear a ministerial statement, hopefully with the reserved right to respond to it, and I was denied, and not me, Barbadians were denied the right to hear that ministerial statement because Barbadians needed to be given some account as to the events that took place on Monday. Barbadians needed to be given an account as to what had been government's role, what had been government's preparedness or lack of preparedness. Barbadians needed to know why a cluster of boats were in an unsafe harbor just prior to a destructive hurricane, while some members of the government, I can't say all, were there, while they were engaged in revelry at Kensington Oval. I will not apologize for that. It is a fact. They were at Kensington. I can't say all of them were, but I want to say that it reflects some form of neglect of an important industry Some minister ought to have been assigned. Some minister, I don't know which one, but some minister ought to have been assigned to the fishing industry. You have a category 4, whether it's 4, 3, 2, or 1. Some minister ought to have been assigned to ensure that our fishing industry was safe from the destruction that it endured on Monday. Here we are now with an industry substantially disabled. Here we are, we have not lost lives, but we've lost livelihoods. And it is painful to watch the interviews. It is painful to hear a man say he had 3 boats, Mrs. Weeks. He has none today. It is painful to hear a wife say that she sells fish and her husband is a boat owner and they do not know what they're going to do. It is absolutely painful to hear a man say that the government, and I'm going to broaden it, that governments have never respected the fishing industry. In spite of the wealth it brings into this country, it was painful to hear him say that. And when asked what he is going to do, he said, walk about and beg people for things to eat and things to drink. That is painful. Wow. That is painful. Someone was negligent, politically negligent, administratively negligent in failing to ensure that our industry was protected from the ravages of that hurricane on Monday. Somebody has been negligent. Why are they going to deny that? Why are they so resistant? Why are they so resistant to what everybody in Barbados knows? And beyond resistance, why are they so intolerant? It is the truth. It is the truth, and they must accept the truth. And in accepting the truth, they must now look for solutions. And that is where this country must be at this juncture. Yeah. At this juncture, we must be looking for solutions.
I love that. And I want to say to those of you, because I see a lot of comments on social media and even in the chat here where people are saying, well, it's their business. And so the government, the idea, just as though I didn't understand, I was thinking that why don't they take care of their, but when you consider the cost of the boats and even the haulage and all of that, I have to think about, say, for example, the agricultural industry, the sector. That sector is heavily subsidized. When you look at tourism, I mean, when you begin, because a lot of people don't understand these things, Mr. Thorne, but tourism is heavily subsidized. You look at the sugar industry. Sometimes I say, well, it's a government that's really running these businesses. So all of these industries, they need a subsidy in order for them to operate. You take the film industry. I'm a filmmaker, Mr. Thorne, and that is what we've been crying out. And we are a young fledgling industry, and so we're going to need that injection. We're going to need you to come and hold us up. And for a very an industry like the fishing industry, Mr. Thorne, that you have so eloquently described to us at the beginning of this segment. And for it to still be in this kind of condition where it is seen as something second class, something that is contributing over 12 million US
it's not so high. They haven't elevated it to second class. It hasn't reached that high in the estimation of too many people. It's probably not 5th class. And that is why the criticisms that you will hear of fishermen and the fishing industry, you're not going to hear of other industries. And as you've correctly said, we assisted tourism during COVID. And this is not a condemnation or criticism of hoteliers or people involved in tourism, because that's an important industry. But who complains when tourism receives help? Who complains when manufacturing during COVID? There are parts of manufacturing that received help. Nobody complained because these are glamorous areas. Who complained when we borrowed $50 million to paint Kensington? Who complained? Only a few of us. Who complained when we dedicated public monies to deviance and social marginalization over the last few months. You know what I'm talking about. Barbadians know what I'm talking about. Yes, we committed public monies to deviance and marginalization in this country. Obviously, we're trying to help the fellas to get some money. The success of that program is yet to be revealed. But the larger point is that we as politicians, we as taxpayers have consented in assistance, large assistance given to several sectors of the economy. You pointed out tourism, you pointed out sugar. I mean, sugar was hobbling for years and years and years. I wonder if Barbadians understand the level of protection, financial protection that has been given to the sugar industry over the last many, many years. I don't want to put a number on it, but I know it became an issue in the 90s when the industry was restructured and the industry was helped along. It was hobbling and it was helped along by taxpayers' monies. And in more recent times, as I said, deviants in Barbados got some financial assistance from the taxpayers' money as well. But we complain. We complain about the thought that fishermen should receive some help. We hear, oh, they don't pay insurance and they don't do this and they're irresponsible. But a lot of us are irresponsible as well in how we do things in our professions, even in our politics sometimes we're irresponsible. Yes, but these are fishermen. They occupy the lower rungs of society's strata. So, there's not a lot of respect, but respect is due and respect must come. And I think that the government will and must reach a point of bringing solution to this crisis. This is a severe crisis. We thought we looked on at first glance and thought, oh, it's the loss of a boat. Nobody died, but it's the loss of livelihoods. And it is the loss of livelihoods beyond the men who go out on those boats, the women who sell the fish, an entire industry and its consumers will miss this industry. It gets smaller. The economy, I don't know how significant it will be, but the economy must contract. And apart from the economy, you will have living beings out there who will have nothing to do. I spoke to another constituent yesterday and I asked him, I almost called his name, what are you going to do? He said, boy, I got some rent here to pay. I do not know what I'm going to do. The boat that he used to fish on Marcia is at the bottom of the sea off Bridgetown. What is he going to do tomorrow and next week? Are we not prepared as a country to consider this? Are we so lacking in empathy and compassion that we will not consider the importance of these lives to a society, to an industry, to our very palates, that these are men who feed us, these are women who feed us, and will we just dismiss them with accusations of failure to pay insurance? Look, Marcia, I went to pay my insurance on Monday. Monday? Not Monday, yesterday. Man, and I'm sitting down there trying to haggle with the lady. House insurance. Interesting time to pay it, huh? But I admit that. And the point is, for a lot of us, the car and the house and everything, the insurance rates in this country are high.
Yes.
And a fellow will try to cut a corner. And he will try to do it with a boat because a boat, look, insurance, in insurance, you're really buying a risk. You're paying against the risk of an unhappy event. And I don't want to condone it, but if a fella sails his boat from here down to Tobago and back, he figures, look, unless it is very personal negligence, he's going to go there and get back. He's not going to spring a leak. He's not going to collide with another boat. And he may do that for 5, 10, 15 years. And he has a choice. Should I pay insurance for this low risk activity? Or should I take the chance? Some people take chances. Sometimes when you have a house fire, the media, one of the first questions the media asks, was the house insured?
Yeah.
Because people understand that it really dents your pocket. And people are not rich. People will try to cut and contrive.
Mhm.
And a fisherman, a boat owner tries to cut and contrive. I heard Mr. Bourne say, look, if I try to insure all three, it is going to diminish my profits. That may be, some people will make a judgment as to that behavior. Some people will, but it is not recklessness. It is a chance that people take that a boat will go without an accident for 5, 10, 15 years. It's a chance that they take. I hope they don't take it with cars on the road, because that is a risk that
Yeah, that's a
you should
higher.
not
It's a
play
higher
with,
risk.
because you're
It's a
playing with
higher risk.
people's life. Yes,
Yeah,
there's a high risk. But,
yeah.
both people are not perfect. Like the rest of us, they're flawed. We are flawed. And we cut corners and we take chances. But the boatman, I get a sense that people are so disgusted that they're out there looking for a reason to demonize the fisherman. How could he be out there? He ain't got his boat insured and it is
Mm.
captured up in a corner, and he don't have any insurance. It was destroyed, and I'm going to repeat this. The boat was destroyed not because it did not have insurance cover. The boat was destroyed because somebody was negligent. Somebody placed, how many ever they were, 60 or 100, whatever the number was, somebody placed those boats up in a corner. And if you saw them crashing against each other, you would know that they should not have been there. You would
So
know
let
that
let
they should have been spread out across Barbados.
so Mr.
You would
Mr.
know
Thorne.
that some urgency ought to have been attached to the safekeeping of those boats, and that there ought to have been some remedy. I'm sorry to have interrupted you, Marcy.
Yes,
I'm really
no,
sorry about
no,
that.
no, no, no. But I understand your, the passion at which you're speaking, and it's making complete sense, because I was one of those saying, why aren't the boats insured? But as I spoke
Mhm.
to people today, I've
Yeah.
begun to understand a bit better that, it's a cost of the boats, and then there's not much subsidy. I was speaking to one of them today, and a fisher folk, and she said to me that one of the areas that a lot of people don't understand is that the fisherman has to pay the same price for gas that we pay on the gas on the road, for your vehicle, and it's very
Mhm.
expensive
Mhm.
to go to sea, because they go out there for
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
say 2 weeks or so, thereabout. I hope I took the right notes and I'm not saying the wrong thing. That, as you said, I think you said 2 to 3 weeks that they go out there and they have to
Mhm.
buy groceries for for the men, and so on, and then they have the gas. So even she was saying that even the petrol, that there's something that
Mhm.
needs to be done for them, because they are
Yes.
also paying back
Yes.
money, because they don't go and buy these boats cash. Don't forget, now they have to pay monthly
No,
on
they
these
don't.
boats. So it's a lot of
Yes. Yes. Yes.
expense, that they
Yes.
have to endure. These are
Yes, indeed.
generally
Yes,
poor
indeed.
people, and so it's not
Yes.
easy, and that's
Yes.
why the subsidy is important. Have you heard anything of that in terms of the petrol?
No, I did not, but I know there's an association, Barnufo, the Barbados National Union of Fisherfolk
Mm,
Organizations. I'm not sure. I don't speak without authority. I'm not sure if the cost of the price of the fuel is subsidized. I don't know. What I do know is that we're all flawed in our personal and business habits, and we seem quite standard than that which we hold other people. And that is because a lot of us are looking for a way out. And the way
yes.
out of this crisis is to blame them, to demonize them. And I want the public to stop that. I want the public to look at itself and look at its own habits. And before it casts a stone, the verse about casting stones.
Yes.
Let the one who is without sin cast the first stone. All of us
Mhm.
are sinners in terms of our business practices. We all try to cut a corner sometimes. They're no different. They're no different from us. They are no different from us. But we are
Yes,
trying to
yes.
demonize them. We are trying to hold them to this exceptionally high standard that a chap must look at his boat and say, well, if it is valued 400,000, I'm going to pay a $400,000 premium. Uh, which gives me the opportunity to say this, that when I was at the insurance company yesterday, and I joked and said I was trying to haggle my way into a cheaper premium. Uh, if I remember my insurance law well, a broker is the agent for the insured person, for the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if our brokers remember this, that the role of the broker is to negotiate as good a premium, as affordable a premium as possible. And we tend as consumers to accept whatever the insurer asks us for. If he says, I want $100, we pay, like if we pay an electricity bill, we have no choice. Um, it's a contract. And I am going to ask the brokers in Barbados quite gently and kindly to get into the habit now. I'm sure they do it, but I want to remind them that they could do it a bit more. That they need to negotiate insurance premiums. And if they do so, they need to be appearing to negotiate uh, favorable premiums on behalf of the consumer. We know that the insurance company wants to make money, but just to remind the brokers that in law, the broker is the agent for the consumer, for the person who's purchasing the insurance. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people believe that the broker is allied legally to the insurance company. Yes, he's allied to the insurance company in terms of his responsibility to ensure that the coverage is given. But
Mm-hmm.
before that stage is reached, he is supposed to be there negotiating on behalf of the consumer, on behalf of the person who is purchasing the insurance. So
Yes.
I say that as a suggestion going forward, because we all want to find ways to resolve this crisis. And in resolving this crisis, we will obviously be hoping that the insurers make a bit of a sacrifice for an industry that's so important. Not that
Mm-hmm.
we're asking them to give anybody a free ride, but to recognize that the industry has been crippled to a large extent, and that if it is to recover, they're going to need some concessions too. Um, I would hope as well, and it is not only the insurance companies, I would hope that the credit unions or banks or financial institutions uh, can show a human face, because something has to be done and the government
Yes.
has to do something. And the government has to do something not because a government comprises nice people, but a government is duty bound as politicians who must be involved in the commercial and economic life of a country. They are obligated as such to intervene and to find a way to resolve this crisis. They're entitled to do that privately. It is not our job. They've been asking us. One lady asked me if I went down, if I went down to Oysters. She said it on social media, and she said it in all seriousness. If I went down there, I help the people sweep away the sand. And, sometimes people do say some ridiculous things. But I want to tell you this, Marcia. When I went down there on Monday after the all clear was given, people still have their sense of humor. And this is not to digress. But several people were saying, well, boy, they said they spent 5 million. Well, if they say so, they got to spend I'm sorry, 15 million now. And people found a way to laugh themselves out of their sorrow.
Yes.
But a lot of mistakes have been made. Uh, I know one of the sexy words going around this country now is resilience. And if it is to have any real meaning, on Monday, what I saw was resilience. Even the fellows who play the road tennis in the back, they were
Mm-hmm.
shoveling the sand up. That is evidence of resilience. The lady
Yes.
who had sand in her place, when I went in there, look, her place was almost clean. So to the lady that asked if I helped to clean away the sand, no, I did not get a chance to, but I saw it being done.
Yes.
Um, Marcia, I realize you're I realize you're putting up some pictures on the screen,
Yes, I wanted
and
you to
if you're
so
doing
let's
that,
yeah, Dave, go back to the first picture. So these pictures, we need to tell the. Can you tell us? Give us the history, or the background on
yes,
these pictures, Mr. Thorne.
absolutely happy to do so. Um, when was this? I know it was before COVID, and I know it was early in the first term. I and look, I am not being immodest here, but I must begin this sentence with the word I. I
Yes.
convened meetings at Oystons to find ways, and this probably would have been 2018, 2019, won the government in 2018. Yeah, it would have been around 2018, 2019. And one of the first order of business, yes, that photograph there. Let me tell your viewers what that photograph is about. That, I can't see it too well. That photograph is that of a group of, yes, thank you very much. A group of, yes, that's me there in the middle in the tie. I had come from work. Um, that was a weekday. I had convened a meeting of all the stakeholders in Oystins, boat owners, fishermen who were not boat owners. The lady to the right of the photograph, no, the other side. Bring her up. That lady, and I hope she doesn't mind me calling her name. Her name is Lucille Clark. Lucille Clark is the oldest fish vendor in Oystins, stands regally. And she came to that meeting. What were we discussing? Lucille Clark is probably around 90 years old now, I think. I know she's high in her 80s. Her sister is called Evelyn Dottin, two proud residents of Oystins. She started selling fish at the age of 14. She's been doing it for 70 something years. When she started selling fish, she was walking the street selling it. She now occupies a stall in the fish market at Oystins. But I digress. What is this meeting here about? We called, not we, I did it. Permit me to say I called a meeting of
You are
all of
such
the
a modest
vendors.
person, but you call the meeting. That's the thing. That's the thing about. That's why they go around social media. Can I let me say something here? And this is why people don't understand Mr. Thorne, and that's why they love to say I am DLP, because I come to your defense, but you have to be able to judge a person by the spirit. You don't understand, Mr. Thorne is not somebody that is going to push what he does, and I did this and I did that. And that is why some of the things that you see going around in social media, they say, why he don't come out and this, and why, because that is not his style, and I have to
Okay,
jump in here because
thank
I
you.
admire that. But go ahead. You go ahead. Sorry.
That's very kind of you.
So you
And
can say I.
I did
I
not
am going
do
to
that.
say I because you did it.
Yeah,
So say I.
permit me to say this, Marcia.
Yes.
I did not call that meeting because I'm nice, which I may not be. I called that meeting because I was and still am the political representative, the parliamentary representative. So it was political action that brought me into that meeting. And I call that meeting of all of the people concerned in the industry. The person next to me, I hope he does not mind, but it's there in the photograph,
So we
is
go back
Mr.
to the
Ralph Williams. We
photograph.
know him as
Yes.
Busy. He's in the second one too. He is standing to my right. Um, Included in that photograph, that gentleman, Mr. Williams, very kindly, I think he was the man that Mr. Williams brought in from North America. And I will tell you why he brought him in. Uh, those are all the boat owners and fishermen there. Uh, Further to the right of myself and Mr. Williams and the gentleman from North America and the other gentleman there to the other side. The other side. Hallam there in the red shirt, he died, I think, last year or 2 years ago. That gentleman there in the white hat, he's an engineer as well, Ralph Adams. Ralph and I were at school around the same time. So we called it the meeting of the Ralphs. Ralph Thorne, Ralph Williams, and Ralph Adams. Yes, that's Ralph Adams there. We held a meeting in that boatyard. And the reason for that meeting was to find a way to haul the boats up into the boatyard. Yes. And we discussed building a jetty or a little harbor. And the engineer said, no, it would not be possible because the motion of the sea would make the boats unstable as they were unstable in Bridgetown. So
Mhm.
they dismissed that idea. And we came up with the idea of having a vehicle. This vehicle would actually go into the sea. The boat would come at shore's edge. That vehicle, yes, that's Ministers Humphrey and Prescott, and that's myself. They're second from right. All these meetings, I involved the government ministers, and because I played myself humbly, yes, that's me there speaking to the media. Kirk is next to me, to my right, and all those microphones come from. That's the vehicle I was talking about. Marcia, these discussions were so. That's the vehicle. These discussions were so advanced. That's the vehicle. So that this vehicle was supposed to go into the sea. It would have rested underneath the boat. It would clasp itself around the boat, and it would pull the boat into the boatyard. We presented those plans to government, and this was long time ago, a long time ago. We presented those plans to government. Marcia, please permit me. I called that meeting, not because I'm nice, but because I'm the parliamentary representative, politically duty bound to do it. And we had the support of all those good people in the photograph. Uh, Someone will ask the government what happened to the proposals that we made. I'm not here to criticize on that because, as you would have seen, I got Kirk to come and I got Trevor to come. I beg your pardon, Minister Humphrey and Minister Prescott attended the meeting. At the time, Trevor was the minister responsible for NCC. Kirk was the minister responsible for the blue economy. I think that minister is now Adrian Ford. So that there's no, and you would pick up from my tone that there's no hostility between us. I was asking them to do a job as ministers with their, that's the vehicle, with their portfolios. Come, let us see what we can do for Oistins. Not because we are nice, but because as politicians and parliamentarians, we are duty bound to solve the problems in Oistins, the problems related to this problem here now. That if we had that vehicle, if we had safe harbor in Oistins, a lot of those boats that sank on Monday would be intact today. So that this work was started a long time ago. That's where I found myself walking through the boatyard after, during our discussions, because we were really committed to the cause. Let me pause and say to you, Marcia, and I will say this, and I tell the truth. I drove by Oistins and saw. They will say that I don't go to Oistins often. That's not true. But the day that they put up that fence around the boatyard, my heart sank. You know, I don't know if you've gone through Oistins recently. The government has not only fenced in the playing fields of this country to make them appear separate and apart from the villages in which they're contained, but they also did it to the boatyard in Oistins. I came along and a boat owner told me years ago that Sir Harold St. John, the revered Sir Harold St. John, said, never fence in the boatyard. I don't know. The boat owner did not tell me precisely why Sir Harold said not to. But if this is his view, I agree with him that the boatyard is an organic part of Oistins. It gives Oistins its identity, a boatyard with people building boats and boats being hauled up and pushed into the sea. That is the Oistins identity. And if you make it a secluded or fenced off area, psychologically, you remove that boatyard from the property, from the social property that we call Oistins. I am so distressed today to see not only it has been fenced in, but it has barbed wire at the top of it. What is it? I don't know who called for it. I don't know if the boats were at risk of being vandalized. I don't know. But that boatyard stood there for a long, long time. Sir Harold said not to fence it in. Sir Harold has gone to the great beyond, and all of a sudden they fenced it in. I don't think they should do it. I would like to see the fence come down. I would like that to see that psychologically and socio-psychologically that boatyard becomes an organic part of the Oistins that owns it and that is owned by that. That is the identity of Oistins, and it must remain an organic part of Oistins. So that is just something that I wanted to say about Oistins, about the cutting up, partitioning Oistins up like this, separating the boatyard from the people of Oistins. A lot of tourists, when they walk from down by the church and the laundry down there, they walk right through the boatyard, and that is a feature of Oistins. It gives them a feel of the town, and they walk from the boatyard, they walk right into the market. What you have down there now are a lot of fences. I don't know if it is if there's a fresh need for security, but you are really damaging the identity of Oistins with all these fences. Yeah, too many
Yeah.
fences, and it is looking like a military base. It needs to become a social location once again, and a cultural location. But to come back, that's the vehicle there on the screen. To come back to it, that is what the vehicle looked like. I'm not going to accuse the government of anything in relation to the proposals that we made. Perhaps the proposals are still there. Perhaps the proposals will be accepted. Perhaps they told me what they were going to do, and I don't know if I've forgotten. But the fact is, if these proposals had been accepted, and if our meetings had yielded enough fruit, Marcia, Mrs. Weeks, some of those boats that perished on Monday would have been in Oyston standing proud today. I
Wow.
tried my best, but clearly, as the song says, my best was not good enough. Nothing has happened, and all these efforts have come to nil. All those big meetings, all the problems we thought we had solved. Yes, that's the engine of the vehicle. All the problems we thought we had solved, not solved
I want
for
Dave
some
to
reason.
keep this on the screen. People are taking screenshots, and the reason they're taking screenshots, Mr. Thorne, it's because if we didn't have this issue, Mr. Thorne is not the person that is going to be putting out all of this and say he did this and so on. And it's important for people to understand that there were proactive steps that were being taken. It is
Yes,
that, and when you
we had
hear
several meetings, Mrs. V.
mm,
Yes, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I'm sorry. I'm
no, no,
sorry.
no, go ahead. No, you're correct. Go right ahead. Yeah.
Yes, just to say that we held several meetings, and I want to compliment Mr. Williams again because he was so committed to the idea that I think he flew the man in from Florida. I think, yeah, from Florida, and showed us these photographs of the vehicle that he was proposing to have the problem solved. And that's why so many fishermen, so many I recognize a lot of them, by the way. There's Hallam, as I told you, in the red shirt. He and I fell out at one point, not a problem. He died. He died recently, not because we fell out. I recognize some of the other, and I am sure Trevor Bourne, Mr. Bourne, who lost his 3 boats, he's in that photograph as well, which tells you that we had the people there who have suffered loss on Monday. We had the people there who have suffered loss on Monday. We had the people who were
Okay.
involved in the proposals.
Are you hearing him, or am I the one
And
offline?
we put proposals to government. Hearing me?
Right. I'm hearing now. I'm hearing now. Go ahead, right ahead.
My work.
Okay. He's cutting out. You're cutting out, Mr. Thorne. You're cutting out. That's such a pity. Okay, you're cutting out. Why don't you just leave? I'm going to let you leave and come again. I want this
I
is
wasn't
this
doing.
is. Let me let you leave and
How,
come again.
how
I'm going to remove you, and you go out, exit, and come back in and see if that might help. Let me see. Let me see. Okay, let's see. All right.
you hearing me?
Yeah, keep speaking. Let me see. Yes, hearing now. Let's continue.
Yes. Oh, good, good. And I'm repeating this for emphasis, Mrs. Weeks. What I was
Yes.
doing was political. I was duty bound to do it. I was duty bound to use my office as parliamentary representative for the constituency of Christchurch South, and more particularly for Oystins, a fishing town, to find solutions to the problem of fishing. And because the boats had no way of getting onto the land safely, I thought that I should speak to the engineers, Mr. Williams and Mr. Adams, and Mr. Herbert was there at one point in time. All engineers, all esteemed engineers, and we, let me say we brought them together and we had these meetings and they were so happy. And not only did I bring them there, but I brought the politicians, my colleagues. I brought Mr. Prescott and I brought Mr. Humphrey. And we had some wonderful meetings. Sometimes we had them during the week, but mainly we had them on Saturdays. And I want to compliment Mr. Williams again for the efforts he made in flying this man
Yes.
in from the United States to find a
Yes.
solution to this problem. I want to congratulate him. I haven't seen Ralph Adams. I hadn't seen Ralph for a long time. And 2 Sundays ago, I saw Ralph at lunch. And we spoke. And we didn't speak of Oystins, but we spoke cordially. But I tried. I tried my best, but my best wasn't good enough. Nothing has happened at
Yeah.
Oystins in terms of the
What, can
haulage
you
of
tell
these
us what the
boats.
cost was? What would have been the cost for this piece of equipment,
Oh dear.
Mr. Do you
Ah,
remember?
no, I don't. I don't remember, but in terms of governmental expenditure, it was not expensive. It definitely was not expensive. And it was the
Yes.
alternative, the government building a very expensive dock for the boats. And the
Ah,
engineer said not to go with the dock because it would have made the water was too the water would have crashed the boats against the dock, just as happened in Bridgetown on Monday.
Bridgetown. So
But it was
it
not
is not.
expensive, and I feel so proud of those photographs. I feel really proud of them. That here was a time when the entire fishing community came together to assist government in resolving a problem relating to fishing. And I'm going to
Yes.
stop short of blaming government
Yeah,
for
because they dropped the
the fact
ball. I
that
mean, you
this
won't do it, but
did not come to
you're not
fruition.
saying it, but it is true that they dropped the ball because when you think that okay, 5 million, I'm saying it, not you. 5 million was used. They said they spent it on oysters. Can you imagine if that money and they could have? It might have cost more than 5 million, but a little bit more was put on it, and
No, it
they
did not. No, Mrs. Weeks, it did not cost 5 million. I can tell you that. That vehicle that I showed you did not. I don't think it would have cost 5 million.
And then
I
to
don't
think
think
of
so.
how much then and this is what I want to say this to the Barbadian public, and this is what you see the young people did in Kenya. They're holding their political, their government, let's say they're holding their politicians, they're holding the government accountable and saying what you spend
Mhm.
$5,000 to do what in Oystins when years ago, probably a fraction of it could have been used to buy to buy this equipment, this piece of equipment that would allow the boats to be hauled out of the water and brought on land, and all of them would not have had to be brought to the Bridgetown
Yes,
Harbor to be stuck
yes,
up together. There,
yes,
this was a solution
yes,
that you had. You see, this is a solution that you
yes,
had, and you
yes,
dropped the ball there. You
yes,
also dropped the ball, and
yes,
Mr. Thorne alluded to it, and I am going to say it. Mr. Thorne, you also dropped the ball, government. For those of you who are watching from the government, you dropped the ball in that you had cricket going on. Yes, okay, so cricket was going on. Nobody knew that we were going to have a Cat 4 hurricane. But the thing about it, though, is that okay, cricket was finished. Did we have to continue with all those parties and all of those things that you guys did? What about the preparation of the country? You were telling us to prepare, but you yourselves weren't preparing.
mhm.
You weren't doing anything. You weren't
Precisely,
doing anything, and
precisely,
that's what we're talking
precisely.
about. That's what we're talking, and we have a
Yes,
right.
yes, yes,
Mr. Thorne has a right as a leader of the opposition, and I dare say the people of Barbados, they have a right to ask you these questions, and they have a right to say
yes,
how they feel about how you
yes,
conduct yourself and how you govern this nation. And that's what we are talking
yes.
about tonight.
Precisely. They made a mistake. They made a misjudgment, and they must accept the criticism and stop demonizing people who merely meet their responsibility to criticize and to criticize constructively. Look, Mrs. Weeks, I'm going to use the word I again. I made a proposal to the NCC for the construction of a larger gazebo at Oistins. I don't know how well you know Oistins, but
Yes.
the dominoes in Oistins became a really central feature of the Oistins project, the Oistins package, the Oistins attraction. And I said, look, these domino players are crowded into a very small area. And I used to see Barbadians and tourists come up, walk up Oistins, they shop and so on at the various restaurants. And then they'd all stop and watch these domino players. And that was a feature. You see that in Cuba, I think. I've seen photographs of Cuba in which the people are playing Wari and dominoes and so on. And that, it is such a peaceful, it is a real oasis in Oistins. And I put a proposal to NCC, which NCC accepted, incidentally, to construct a large gazebo to the east of the Bay Garden. You know where the dominoes players are? They're out under a mango tree in the car park on the other side of the street. And they were under a piece of plastic. When the rain came, they would put up some plastic and under this mango tree. I believe they gave them a tank recently. So that our plans for the gazebo, like the vehicle that would have pulled the boats out, those plans have gone as well. I did my best, but my best wasn't good enough. NCC approved it. As far as I'm aware, town planning approved the construction of the gazebo. I didn't do it because I was nice. I did it because I was the parliamentary representative. I was the politician. I am the politician there. But those plans have gone awry as well. Where are those plans? Where are the dominoes players under a right tank in the car park in the dead of the night? Under a right tank. When they could have had a gazebo, I had, yes?
I was saying
beg your pardon.
that when I think about Oistins really, it's like when a tourist comes to Barbados. When I'm doing filmmaking and I have people come into the country, as a general rule, Dave and I always they have to go to Oistins. Once I have visitors in Barbados, I take them to Oistins. It's the Mecca. It is a place of tourism.
There's an energy there.
You haven't gone to Oistins, you have not, and you're going to tell me that you had all these proposals, and this is not something that they thought that they needed to fund, that they could not pay for that equipment. They didn't think that they needed to spend the money now at that time. Why are they spending it now? And this is what those people on social media need to look and see, that is what is well, it's political in the sense that it's negative. It is not for the benefit of the people. You're now deciding to spend the money and to spend it frivolously. What's the word I'm looking for? Frivolously is the word.
Yeah, they're spending it. They're spending it in their own political interests and not in the genuine interests of the people.
Correct.
Because if it was being spent in the genuine interests of the occupants of that Bay Garden, they would have done more substantial and fundamental work. Yes, because drainage is still a problem, and I'm not talking about the sea coming into the facility on Monday. I'm talking about drainage when it rains. That is the more fundamental work that ought to have been attended to with the $5 million. But I want to say to you again, Mrs. Weeks, the people don't believe. The people in Barbados, including the people in Oistins, do not believe that $5 million was spent in Oistins. And don't come to me. I don't want the government coming to me and, well, not coming to me, but going to the people and saying, oh, you know, Thorne is against it. Even that is contemptuous of people's intelligence. Even that is intended to insult people's intelligence. To go up there and tell them Thorne is against it. When Thorne is saying what the people of Oistins and the people of Barbados are saying, that they don't believe it was $5 million. Perhaps a gallon of paint costs $100,000. And for some reason, most of the paint was red. And for some reason, all the tanks are red. You know, in political science, we call that propaganda, indoctrination. That is how the fascists operate. You work on a man's mind. And when you're not successful with his mind, you know where you go next? Let's not discuss that now. But there's a battle of the mind. There's a
Yes. Well,
battle
we
of
have
the
2 minutes.
mind.
Yes, and
And
that's
this
what
government
is
stands
happening.
condemned for acting in its own political self-interest.
Yes. Well, we have 2 minutes, and what I was told is that there was a meeting today with the boat owners. That the Prime Minister had called a meeting with the boat owners,
Yeah,
and I want to thank
excellent.
people. I want to thank you, Mr. Thorne, for speaking up because, and this is
My
what
pleasure.
I want to take a half a minute to educate Barbadians on the role of the leader of
Yes,
the
please.
opposition. He is there. He
Thank
is
you.
there to speak up on behalf of the people. Okay, he is there to speak about what concerns us. His voice is going to go where our voice might not be able to go. And so when he speaks, you understand, we kind of work together. He speak and we become his echo. We speak and he echo what we're also saying. And so we have to thank him for making this a national issue. That they, and because of that, I believe that that's a big part of why that meeting was held today, so that those boat owners in Oistins could get a hearing. Do you understand how important the voice of the leader of the opposition is? Important, and they fear it. I tell you, and they respect it, and they fear it. And I want to thank Mr. Thorne for having the courage to stand up there in that Parliament's car park, and speak up on behalf of the boat owners. Thank you very much. That's why you are there, and that's why the people of Barbados, regardless of the party, come on now, we support the leader of the opposition. He is important for us. He's the only one person there, and we need to support him. Very important. But I'm going to give you the last word, sir. We are finished for tonight, but I can tell you that by the time we get when we come back on this on Friday, we're on this issue again. We're gonna pull this apart again and keep this going until those boat owners are compensated. But go ahead, Mr. Thorne. Welcome. Thank you for being here, and it has been fantastic. And I love that you had the opportunity to be able to show us the pictures, that people see that you're not just getting up and criticizing. This is something you have been working on. It is just that they decided
Yeah.
not to pay any mind to what you were doing and not to support you, not to support you. That's all that was about. And in not supporting you, they did not support the people, the boat owners, the entrepreneurs are now crying tonight. So I want to just allow you to give us your final words for tonight, and as we close.
Marcia, you have spoken for me. You've spoken more eloquently than I can as to the role of an opposition leader. And I want to thank you. I want to urge Barbadians to support the industry that has been crippled. I urge the government to find solutions to the problem. I promise to the government that if this voice is needed in support, they will have it in terms of restoring the industry. Let me end by saying that, let me end by sparing a thought for the other islands who have suffered worse than we have done, and to say
Yeah.
that the Democratic Labour Party is a part of the relief effort. I was driving around on Sunday with lots of water in my car. We were hoping to use that for local consumers here, but we are not going to do that now. We have started a relief effort at the LP headquarters on George Street. And I think in a few days, Mr. Andre Worrell will tell us more about that. We've spoken to Captain Level from the BDF, and we will be taking donations on sending to the other islands that need to be a part of the relief effort. I think that's a positive way to end, Mrs. Weeks. Let us, although we are in some difficulty here, let us help our brothers in the other islands, and this is a good way to do it. Please join with the effort of the Democratic Labour Party in this relief effort. And if you have something that you want to contribute, you can bring it to George Street, and we will ensure that it gets where it ought to go.